Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Really, kol hakavod to you for starting your morning off this way. Such a nice thing to start your morning off learning Torah, especially because what we're going to be doing this series every morning, every Monday at 10 a.m. is we are going to be touring Israel. Some weeks is going to be places, some is going to focus more on people having to do with Israel. You're sure to be amazed every week and surprised, and it'll make you come to Israel even more than you probably already want to. And I am so excited. So I am a tour guide. And as we know, flights aren't really much these days, and Israel's borders are only open for Israeli citizens, which means if you're a tour guide and you work primarily with people that don't live in Israel, you kind of have a problem. So I really miss my job so much because I love it with all my heart and soul. And I am so happy that I get to now do it virtually so I could share my great love with you. And let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so what we are going to be talking about today is the amazing story behind the famous restaurant and house. Which famous restaurant and which house? So there's this restaurant called Anna, and it's in Jerusalem, and I'm going to show you I'm going to explain to you how to get there and everything so you guys know. Some of you might have been there, some maybe not. If you haven't eaten there, you're going to want to at the end of the Zoom. And it has a fantastic story, and that's what we're going to talk about. I want you to notice the background of the flowers that you see. I'm not going to talk about right now what the flowers are, but I just want you to keep that in mind that you see the flowers. Okay. What are the top 5 things that come to mind when you think of Israel? So I can't really hear you, so you could think out loud or think in your head. I'm going to wait a few seconds, and then I'm going to just throw it in. You could write in the chat if you want, but either way, I'm going to throw out answers that I think people say when they think of Israel. What comes to mind? Okay, so I think people think of the Kotel, people think of maybe bar mitzvah trips, a tour bus, the King David Hotel, hopefully you think of the Tanakh and all the stories that took place there. Maybe if you do fun activities like ATVing, you think of that too. You think of great weather, holiness, and I know a huge one, and this is really also at the top of my list, having lived here almost 4 years and even before I moved here. Food. How many of you think of Israel's amazing food? Part of the reason why Israel has such great food, one is because everything is really fresh, and it's actually, in this country, you're constantly learning things. Let's say I want to have strawberries. So in America, you can get strawberries all year round. You go to Uri's, or you go, if you pay enough, you could get it. You could get grapes all year round. You can get everything all year round. Here, if you want strawberries and it's out of season, like in the summer, strawberries are winter fruit. You can't get here in the summer. You just can't get it. So there's all this excitement that builds up because yay, the strawberries are coming out, or yay, this is coming out. And it really, as a person, it teaches you patience, and it teaches you can't always get everything whatever you want. Plus, it also makes it taste extra good. So food is really a huge thing. Plus, of course, because we are in Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, obviously everything tastes better. So that's another reason. Now, the restaurant that I mentioned is called Anna. I want to show you how to get there. If you have not been there, even if you have, keep this in mind so you can get there your next trip to Israel. So most people are familiar with Ben Yehuda Street. So you see that on the left. I put Moshiko's Falafel that most people like eating from, and the ice cream store. So you walk straight. You see it's 4 minutes according to Google Maps. And then all the way on the top right, Anna restaurant, which is on a street called Ticho Street. Okay, this restaurant, because of Corona, has been closed. You see the sign right in the middle of the screen. It says it's opening July 1st. So I definitely will make a reservation when it opens. And it's an Italian restaurant, excellent food. Now, before that restaurant was there, it was something called Ticho House, which actually moved, and now is the restaurant Piccolino. If anyone knows that restaurant, I think it's probably my favorite dairy restaurant in Jerusalem. Anyway, Anna, amazing restaurant. You've seen the pictures, all this great food. Now, food in Israel tastes good because it's Israel, but it tastes even better if you know the story behind it. And anything in life, I think the more we know about it, the more you know history, You're walking down the street and suddenly you see a tree or you see a building, and it's not just the building because you know all the history behind it. And the more you know your roots and your own history, the more you could connect and a richer life you live. So one of my goals in doing these classes is to give you this history and give you this information, so your next trip to Israel, or even if your next trip is very far off, your everyday experience and everyday life will be that much richer. So here's a picture of at the Anna restaurant. This is from the outside. Now you see that they have beautiful tables and chairs set up. People that I've spoken to, a lot of them said they've done bar mitzvah parties here. It's really gorgeous, close. And what I want to talk about is the building that you guys see in the picture. It's over here. The story behind the house. Now the story, there's 3 phases to remember. We're going to go through all 3 of them, and then we're going to talk about what is this today. Yes, it's a restaurant, but is there anything else there? If you walked up the steps and went through, what would you find? Okay, so over here is a picture of the old city walls of Yerushalayim, and you might notice that the picture is not exactly the way we see it today. Today, if we were looking at a modern picture, we'd see the walls, and we'd see Mamila, and we'd see the street, and we'd see cars, and we wouldn't see all these trees and dirt. But this is what Yerushalayim used to look like up until about the year 1860. All the Jewish people that lived in Jerusalem lived within the walls. And this is what it used to look like. And then, so I want to mention Mishkenot Shananim. It's a side point, but it connects. Mishkenot Shananim, you see a windmill, which is very, very famous. It's used like every time they do pictures of Jerusalem, it's always in the background. And you see these buildings. This Mishkenot Shananim was the first neighborhood that was built outside the old city walls. People were afraid to leave. What if there's robbers, danger? There's nothing there. But then Mishkenot Shananim, the neighborhood was built, and it really paved the road. And you still see how barren it is. You see the trees and everything. So, but that's just a fun fact to know that was the first neighborhood outside the old city walls. Why am I mentioning that? Because now if we're connecting back to the house restaurant I was talking about, you guys see a picture of this beautiful house. Trees next to it, steps to go up. This was built in 1864. Now, I said the first Jewish neighborhood was built in 1860, which means everything was pretty empty. And this was built by a Muslim family known as the Nashashibi family. And they were very, very rich. This was their summer home. And it was called a kasser, which means like castle or palace. And they lived in the summer. Why not? If you could afford to have a beautiful summer home, why not have it? So this belonged to them. Now they lived in it for a few years, and then they left. No one's really sure why they left, but they left, and then they started renting it out. Okay, so that's phase 1. Remember, Muslim family living in this house. Okay. Next phase, I want you to look at this man and look at his name. It says Moses Wilhelm Shapira. Now I want to ask you guys, is he Jewish? Is he non-Jewish? Is he Christian? It's kind of hard to tell from his name. So you see Moses, you think Jewish, but then Wilhelm, what's Wilhelm? Shapira sounds like a Jewish name. So Moses Wilhelm Shapira, he was a man that was born in Russia, and both his parents died. And after his parents died, his grandpa said, I just want to move, because in Russia, there were a lot of missionaries, Christians, that are trying to get everybody to be Christian. And the grandpa didn't want his grandson to become Christian after deal with it. So he said, let me go to Yerushalayim. So he takes little Moses and he goes to Yerushalayim. And ironically, it's there that he becomes Christian. There were Christians in Yerushalayim too. He finds this missionary and he converts to Christianity. And he marries a woman named Rosetta. They have 2 beautiful daughters, and Moses buys this house. Now, I want to ask you, how does a poor orphan from Russia afford to buy this? We said it was a castle, not a castle, but a big summer home belonging to the Nashashibi family. How does he afford this kind of house? So if he can afford, if he could afford such a thing, it must mean he was a very successful businessman. And indeed, he was a great businessman. And I want to tell you where he got his fortune from. He was a dealer of antiquities. He had a store on the Patriarch Street, which is now in the Christian Quarter. And everybody knew, if you find something old, you go to Moses and you sell it to him, because he's going to give you the best price from anyone around. So when the Bedouins would find things in the caves, and it's really just a side point, it's just so amazing how in Israel today, there's still finding things. Every time I open the news, you see about another coin that was discovered, another statue, another whole structure that they didn't know about. It's really, this is definitely the place to live if you're an archaeologist or interested in it. So he has this store, and anytime people would find things, they would bring it to him. So he got rich from it. But what was the height of his career, where he really, really make his millions, and he had millions, that came from a discovery that he made. He didn't discover this, but this is important to understand. So there's something called the Mesha Stele, or known as Moabite stone, which was discovered in Jordan in 1868. And this is a very, very, very important discovery. It was discovered by a Christian, and the way he discovered it is there were Bedouins. The Bedouins always find everything. They saw this, they saw it was writing, they knew they couldn't read it. So they go to this man, I forgot his name, I think it's Frederick, but a quick Wikipedia search will tell you. And they said, you know, we found this stone, come look at it. So he goes and he looks at it, and he wanted to keep it quiet, because if you make this important discovery, you want the discovery, you don't want everyone to know about it. In the meantime, it wasn't kept quiet, and people started hearing about it. And then they started to read it, and they realized what it said. It's an ancient text dating back to 840 BCE, which in our terms, of Torah terms, it's the dynasty of Omri, which is mentioned in Sefer Melachim Bet. And on it, the king, who's known as Mesha, he is thanking his god Chemosh for defeating the Jewish people. He said, the Jewish people defeated us, and now we defeated them back again. And why was this like a super cool discovery? Because if we open up to Melachim Bet, Perek Gimel, and we look at Pasuk Daled, Mesha Melech Moav, there we go. The name of the king is on the stone, and this was actually the first example they found of an outside text example showing a story in Tanakh. We see it in the Tanakh, we read it, but then when you find something outside, it helps verify it. And to give you a connection to this week's Parashat HaShavua, so there are certain times in the year when Eretz Yisrael is reading a different parasha than you are. So we just read Parashat Chukat, and you guys are reading it this week. The way that happens is because you have 2 days of Shavuot, and you read the reading of the Chag, and we only have one. So then on Shabbat we read Parashat HaShavua. So anyway, your Parashat HaShavua this week, you'll see right at the end of the parasha, it says, Oy lecha Moav, avadata am Chemosh. It's talking, Moav used to own a piece of land in Jordan, and then Sichon Melech Amori overtook it. And here we have the word Chemosh. Chemosh we found in the stone, and now we have Chemosh here. Chemosh was the god of Moav. And then if we go further down, it's mentioning cities. You have the city of Divon. Divon was actually the city where the stone was found. So they find this huge Moabite stone. Now I want to connect this all, like how it's connected to Moses Shapira in a second. It's cool to know the background. We're going to look at the stone and notice that it's cracked a little bit. When they found it, it was actually intact. And then the way it got cracked is, so we know the Bedouins had a lot to do with the discovery, and then all the countries started finding out about it, and they all wanted it. And then the Ottoman Empire, who was in charge at the time, they tried to get the stone to sell it to a certain country. The Bedouins got mad, and the Bedouins broke it. Now, luckily for us, there was this French researcher who was living in Israel named Charles Clermont Ganneau, and he happened to get a copy of all the inscriptions. And then it was broken, but because he had this copy, they were able to put it together. So that's a fun fact, and remember his name because he's going to come up in a second. Now, 1868, this huge, impressive stone, Moav, Chemosh, is discovered. People are going crazy, and then they go even crazier when they realize, look what was just found in a cave. All of a sudden, there's 400 Moabite statues that are found. The Bedouins find them in caves and bring them to Moses Shapira, because we said he was the expert. And the world went crazy. It changed the face of archaeology. It changed, all of a sudden, they have this whole section in archaeology called the statue, things from Moav, and they have these statues, and they're so excited. And Wilhelm Shapira, really, he made his fortune from this, and he got super, super rich. But really, even though he made his millions from this, and that helped him buy the house, there's something that helped him even more. He found in the 1880s, Bedouins come to him and they say, we found this scroll. Will you buy it from us? He looks at the scroll And he finds that the scroll is from this second temple period, from the time of the second Beit HaMikdash. An ancient scroll like that had never, ever, ever been found in history. So now you might say, well, what do you mean? What about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Correct, the Dead Sea Scrolls date back to Beit Sheni and are amazing, and they're also always in the news. But those weren't found until 1947, and now we're talking about the 1880s. So it's a significant amount of time before they find this scroll. The world goes crazy, and everyone wants it. And Moses Shapira decides that he's going to sell it to the British Museum in London for £1 million. So he takes the Megillah and he brings it to them. And they look at it, and of course they have experts from all over the world come and check it because they have to make sure that it's real. And but then right before the British Museum is going to give over a check for £1 million, they say, you know what, let's call one more expert. And who do they call up? They pick up the phone and they say, Mr. Charles Clermont Ganneau. He was the one from the story before where he said he had a copy of the inscriptions in the Moabite stone. Do you mind taking a quick trip to London and looking at this Megillah and seeing if it's real or fake? So he comes, he opens the Megillah, closes it, he opens it again, closes it, and he says, fake. What? How could you tell? He goes, I could tell in 2 seconds, this is a forgery, because if you look at the stitching in between the pages, the stitching is square, and this is modern stitching. So there's no way that this Megillah is real because they didn't stitch like that. And when the British Museum hears that, they're appalled. It's this huge scandal. How dare he try to fool the British Museum into buying something like this? The headlines all over the newspaper completely destroy his reputation. He fights like a tiger to try to get it back. They write, you know, this Jew is trying to trick the British Museum. Never mind that he's been Christian for 50 years, but of course, you know, revert back to the fact that he's a Jew. And he's completely dejected. He doesn't know what to do with himself. His store becomes shambles. No one will buy anything from him. All his credibility is lost. Someone will trust him. And then he decides that he doesn't want to live anymore, and he takes his own life. And he has his wife and his 2 daughters in Jerusalem. They don't know what to do. The mom takes them to Paris, and then eventually they get married, and one of them becomes a famous writer named Miriam. And she writes a book of her childhood, and of course, in her book, she describes her beautiful house that she lived in. And of course, she says, you know, my father was an innocent man. So he tried to fool the entire world. Now, a fake. I want to talk about the Moabite statues again, because, and you guys are not going to believe this, 10 years after he died, this young Christian Arab man says, you know those statues? They're fake too. Shapira and I, we sat in his basement and we made the statues. Are you guys getting this? He faked the entire world. He created new chapters in archaeology, new textbooks. The whole world was flocking. Wow, 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 wow. They're all fake. Shapira was an expert forger, expert at faking, and in fact, these are all fake as well. You would think someone would say, you know, hey, it's like a little bit strange. There's 400 statues all of a sudden found at once. That's kind of a lot, but they were all fake, and there's still museums today that have examples of it. And if you come to Anna Restaurant or Ticho House, in a minute you'll see why I call it Ticho House, other than the fact that the restaurant before Anna used to be called Ticho House. They actually have some of the fakes that you could still see today. But now you guys are not going to believe the best part. The story gets even better. So this is fake. In 1947, 2 Bedouin cousins are with their sheep, goats. They're shepherding in the caves in the Judean desert. And one of them throws a stone into a cave because he lost his goat. It always reminds me of the story of, according to the Midrash with Moshe, and the sheep got lost. And he hears this weird noise. He expects to hear the rock bouncing off the cave, but instead he hears a crash. And he goes into the cave and he discovers these pieces of leather. Wow, I want to tell this story so badly. I'm going to really shorten it. I'll just tell the beginning part. Like this means, if people already know this story and you know where I'm going, this needs a whole class in itself. But he has these pieces of leather and he goes to a shoemaker, and the cousins go to a shoemaker and tell the shoemaker, can you make us shoes out of these pieces of leather? And the shoemaker looks at them, he says, no, I can't make you shoes, but I'll buy them anyway. And in fact, go back to the cave, see if you can find anything else. And they go back, they find a few more. Happens to be lucky for us that the shoemaker in 1947 was also an antiquities dealer, because the pieces of leather that these Bedouin cousins found were not just pieces of leather. They were, in fact, the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that's how the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. It has a fascinating history. Homework to go look them up on Wikipedia. But I think I probably could tell the story more interesting than Wikipedia. Anyway, they make the discovery, they find the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they date back to the time of Second Beit HaMikdash. And then they look at the stitching of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they find that the stitches on the pages are the same stitches that are on the scroll that Shapira found. Now, I said no other scroll had ever been found like that, ever. It was the first one of its kind. So the truth is, how would Charles Clermont Ganneau know what the stitching was in Beit Sheni if they never found anything like that? Now all of a sudden they're finding tons of Dead Sea Scrolls and they see what the stitching is like. And that's what the stitching is. It's not a modern stitching, that is how they stitched. Which leads people to think, oh my gosh, what if Shapira's scroll, which his entire career was ruined from, wasn't really a fake? What if it was genuine? What if it was real? How are we going to find out? So about 10 years ago, they had an exhibition in Israel, and they were exhibiting some of Shapira's work. They got some of the statues. The woman in charge, she had to go to different museums around the world to get the statues, and she wanted even the fakes displayed. And she said, I forgot her name also, I think it's Edith something. She said, how am I going to get my hands on this Megillah that Shapira found? So she's not a lazy girl. She's a researcher. She can't be lazy. She goes to London and she goes through the archives of the British Museum and she finds newspaper articles and she realizes that a short time after there was an auction and this man named Spencer bought the Megillah for how much? For 20 pounds. Originally, it was going to be sold for 1 million pounds. This is when they thought it was real. And then when they realized it was a fake, it was sold for 20 pounds. And he bought it. So she said, okay, now all I need to do is find Spencer and find the Megillah and then compare it. And imagine this is real. Oh, I forgot to add, one of the amazing things about the scroll that Shapira discovered is it was from Parashat Va'etchanan and Sefer Devarim. It had the 10 commandments, except it had an 11th commandment as well. The 11th commandment in the scroll was Lo tisna et achicha b'levavecha. Don't hate your friend in your heart. And if it was real and everything, like how amazing, they have a version of the Torah with 11 commandments. So this was a scroll. And she says, okay, let me find out. And she discovers that Spencer lives in Australia. So she takes the phone book and she goes through all the families with the last name Spencer that live in Australia. And she asks them, do any of you know a story about the scroll? Your grandpa maybe? No. She has one name left on the list. She calls and then the woman answers the phone and she says, I remember my grandpa, he had some kind of photo album and he would talk about all these things that he would collect. And I think he mentioned that he bought this scroll once and it was from someone, a Jew that was a forger. And this woman's heart is beating faster and faster. She can't even breathe. She goes, can I come and see the scroll? So the woman on the other end, she says, no, why not? She says, because in the 60s, we had a fire in my house and everything was burned. So ends the story of the scroll that Shapira found. Real or forgery, we will never know. But it is possible that he found a scroll that dates back to the time of the second Beit HaMikdash. It was the first of its kind, had 11 commandments. Or it's also possible, going in line with the fact that he faked the world with his 400 fake Moabite statues, that it was fake as well. We will never know. So that is phase 2 of the house. So we had the Nashashibi family, then we had Moses Wilhelm Shapira, and phase number 3, Dr. Albert and Anna Ticho. In 1913, 2 cousins, Albert and Anna, they came to Jerusalem. Anna was 16 years younger than Abraham or Albert. And Dr. Albert, he was a doctor, he was an eye doctor, and she was an artist. And as things would have it, they fell in love, they got married. Unfortunately, they never had any children. And he was an eye doctor. And you see on the next slide, there's something called trachoma. You could virtually raise your hand if you've ever heard of trachoma. If you are not raising your hand and you've never heard of it, you have Dr. Ticho to thank. Why? Because what trachoma was this eye disease. It was kind of like the flu of the day, or I don't want to talk about corona really, but it was kind of like the corona of the day, where everyone had it. It was this eye disease, and it would infect the eye and it would eventually lead to blindness. 90% of the children of Yerushalayim had it in some form or another, and they didn't know how to stop it, except Dr. Ticho was the only one in the world who knew how to stop it. How? Because around 1916, when they started, obviously they were doing research into the disease, and he realized that it was a germ that causes disease in the eye. And if it's a germ, then all you need to do is find antibiotics. And I just saw someone knew what trachoma was. Excellent. Whoever, shout out. All you have to do is put antibiotics, and then you're good. And that was when antibiotics was starting to be discovered. And Dr. Ticho, he developed this cream, and if you rub the cream on your eye, it had 100% success rate. The disease went away. You could see perfectly. He is the only one in the world that knows how to do this, and this disease is rampant. And everyone is coming to him. In 1925, he opens up a clinic in Jerusalem. His wife, Anna, is the head nurse. And everyone was able to come. Didn't matter what your religion, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, poor, rich, everyone could come. He treated everyone. There were delegations come from Saudi Arabia, because if he's the only one that could treat it and no one wants to be blind, then you come to Dr. Ticho. And there was a man once that he didn't have money. So he told Dr. Ticho, he said, look, I can't pay you with money, but I have this Hanukiya that's been in my family for years. Let me pay you with the Hanukiya. And Dr. Ticho says, okay. And then another man says, let me pay you with the Hanukiya too. And he ends up having this massive Hanukiya collection, which today could be found either in Ticho House. When you walk in, you see this beautiful display. What you guys are looking at, you see some of the Hanukiya. Or if you go to the Israel Museum, you can see the Hanukiya more. In total, his collection was 135 Hanukiya, which is the largest personal collection of anyone. So I'm also going to mention a few reasons why you should go to the Israel Museum. One is so you could see more Hanukiya in the Judaica department. And everyone really, really loves Dr. Ticho. He's just doing great things for the world. Now, 4 years, his clinic is open. He's helping people. He's giving them the eyesight. He goes for a ride to work, goes into the carriage, and then all of a sudden, he feels something in his back. And he tells his helpers, he says, could you guys look, what's in my back? And they look at his back, and they see that there is a knife sticking into his back. An article comes out in Tel Aviv, in the newspaper. Dr. Ticho Nitkad, he was stabbed. In 1929, we said he opened in 1925 the clinic. At 1929, there were riots all over Israel. And the person, I hope if he knew it was Dr. Ticho, he wouldn't have stabbed him, although you shouldn't stab anyone, but he stabbed Dr. Ticho. And Dr. Ticho, he went into a coma. And back then, if you go into a coma, and I don't know today so much about it, but back then, if you wake up, great. If you don't, you don't. And there's nothing that people could do for you. So when people found out that Dr. Ticho was stabbed, and everyone loved him because he's saving the eyesight of the world, they organized these mass prayer gatherings. The chief rabbi of Israel had a special tefillah made for the refuah shlema Dr. Ticho. You see in the picture in the top right, Muslims are praying, they're all praying for him to get better. You see the Christians praying, they're all praying to God to help heal Dr. Ticho. And then after 10 days, he wakes up, and they know that means he's going to get better. And I want to share with you 2 things from his wife, Anna Ticho's diary. One is, as she's sitting by her husband's bedside, she gets this letter. She opens up the letter, and the letter is from the king of Saudi Arabia. And he says, I hereby would like to apologize on behalf of the entire Muslim world for this atrocity that was done. Could you imagine that today? Could you imagine a Muslim leader apologizing on behalf of the Muslim world for something that's done? Because they were so upset. So that's story number one that I'm sure she got a kick out of it. Oh, well, she obviously much more rather her husband better, and not if it happened at all, but they get a letter from the King of Saudi Arabia apologizing. And the second thing is after she realizes he's getting better, she goes home to shower, relax, and she sees on the steps of her house this Muslim woman sitting there. So she goes over to the Muslim woman to see what she needs. And she sees that the Muslim woman is holding an infant in her hands. And the Muslim woman speaks to Hanukiya and says, we, the Muslim community here, we are so horrified by what happened. We feel so bad. We love you and your husband. And we want to do something to try to make up for what happened. Now, you guys, you have everything. So we don't know what to give you, except there's one thing you don't have. You don't have a child. So here. And she hands her an infant. Now, Anna looks at the infant and she's beyond touched by this beautiful act. But she tells the woman, look, you know, I can't just take the infant from you. The infant has parents that want him. But like, what a story that they give them a baby because this is what we want to do. We love you, take the baby. And the fact that through kindness and generosity and love, Dr. and Dr. Ticho and his wife Anna were able to really cause so much unity and love to the fact that they're bringing him a baby is really, really very unique and special. And, you know, God willing today that we can have people like that that can also bring peace and unite. And I mean, obviously it didn't work perfectly because he was stabbed at the end of the day, but it's such a beautiful, beautiful gesture. In 1944, it is Dr. Ticho's 60th birthday party. And one of the guests invited was a man named Shai Agnon. Now, for those of you that went to Flatbush High School or maybe Magan or maybe other high schools, you might be familiar with the writings of Shai Agnon. I remember when I was in Flatbush High School, I remember learning them. Very, very famous writer, beautiful writing. And Shai Agnon, he writes that he knew that he would be asked to speak at the birthday party because he's a writer, so obviously they're gonna ask him to speak. And he's trying to figure out what to say. So he says, okay, let me do something cute. He's an eye doctor. Eye in Hebrew is ayin. Let me look up in the Concordancia, which is a book that people don't really use nowadays because if you want to know how many times the word appears in the Tanakh, you would just Google. You're not going to open up.
We use it all the time.
Huh? Oh, you use it?
In the house, we use it all the time.
Okay. So Rabbi Moses Hebert still uses the book. Amazing. I can't say that I've ever used it because I just use Google. And if it's like Shabbat that I need to know, then I'll just wait till after Shabbat, but beautiful that you use it. Anyway, Shai Agnon, he looks up in this book how many times it says ayin. Now he's hoping that it says 60 or 120 because then he could do a play off to how old he is, but the numbers don't work for him. So he says, okay, it's not the right number, scratch it, I'll do something else. If I take the sentence Yechi Albert Ticho and I do that in Gematria, maybe I'll get to the year 1944, which is his 60th birthday. I'll do a whole cool Gematria thing. So he tries it and then he says it doesn't work if I do a tet, so let me do a tef. And it still doesn't work. So he says, okay, scratch that, can't do that either. So then he says, okay, let me approach it from a different angle. Dr. Ticho is an eye doctor. Why is he an eye doctor? He's an eye doctor because he wants to give people his eyesight because his wife Anna is an artist and he wants nothing more than the people to be able to see the beautiful artwork of Anna, his wife, because when they see it and they see the pictures of Yerushalayim that states painting, they'll be inspired and fall in love. So that's what he ended up saying at the birthday party. I think that's so beautiful and it says a lot about the relationship between Dr. Albert and Anna. And now brings me back to the very first slide that we saw. I said I want you guys to pay attention to the beautiful flowers, even though I'm not going to address it. Those flowers are painted by Anna Ticho. We see how gorgeous it is, and the other pictures are other scenes, not only of Yerushalayim. Some of them look like the hills of the Gush. Now, the Israel Museum, which has some with the Hanukiya Collection, we said, and it also has some of Anna's work. If you go to the gift store, they have coasters and bags and scarves and all kinds of things with the flowers on the left, like the pink flowers imprinted on it. And when I was there in a different lifetime, and I was there a very long time ago, I saw these trivets that you put under food that's hot with the flowers, and I was like, oh, it's so pretty. Let me buy it for my grandma. I'll buy it for me. And it said on the back like Anatico. And I didn't really think deep into it. I knew the story then, but I wasn't as familiar with it as I was now. And I was like, oh, these are pretty flowers. I want to buy it. And now that after researching to teach you about this wonderful story, and I see this picture, I'm like, so I see that some people are raising hands with questions. I'll take questions at the end or comments. So I see these flowers and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have that in my kitchen cabinet. So you know what that means? Now, the next time people come over for Shabbat, if I use that on the table, I'm going to tell them, wow, you see these flowers that you're looking at, they're not just regular flowers. And then I'm going to have to get into the whole story of Anatico, because if they know the whole story, they'll appreciate the food that much more. So it was fun for me to discover that I had her artwork in my house and I didn't even know it. So this is Anatico's artwork. Now, she lived 20 years after her husband, and she loved to paint and to draw. So after he died, she primarily was busy with her artwork. Now, here's a picture again that we saw in the beginning. This is the restaurant. So I want to now talk about the structure of the building. So you walk up the steps, you go in. On the first floor, if you walk straight and you go up these steps, all these pictures that you see in the frames are Anna's work. Now, if you turn around behind you, you will see the Hanukiya Collection, and also not pictured here, the fake Moabite statues that I said that Shapira made. They actually have some of the fakes in the museum, so you could see it too. And if you go to the top floor, you see the restaurant. Now I want you guys to notice the domes, like the arches in the ceiling, because in 2015, they had this huge restoration. I think it was 2015. They had this huge restoration project where they wanted to restore the house, bring it to beauty. And if you look up at the ceiling, they found these beautiful designs with blue patterns. And this dates back to the time when the Nashashibi family was living in the house. And Dr. Anna and Albert most probably didn't even know about it because it was dirty, it was covered. And now that's something you could see today when you are having your meal. You could just look up and see this beautiful art. So I have a task for you. We opened up, I said, what are the top things that come to mind when you think of Israel? And we named a bunch of things. And I said, one on top of the list, of course, is the food of this wonderful Eretz Zavat Chalad Udvash. So here's what I want you guys to do. Next time you come to Israel, we're going to think of food. I want you to go to Ticho House. I want you to go to the second floor and have a wonderful, wonderful meal. Dairy, Italian restaurant, amazing, amazing food. Then I want you guys, as you're eating, to look up and look at the beautiful ceiling and then think of the Nashashibi family who built the house and owned it. Then after you have your meal, I want you to go down to the main floor, and I want you to think of Moses Wilhelm Shapira as you see the collection of fake Moabite statues, and think of the scroll that, was it real or not, we still don't know. And then I want you to continue on that floor and look at the beautiful artwork of Anna. Another thing you could see that's original from the time when they were living in the house. So the clinic was not in their house originally, but then after he got stabbed and got better, they moved it to his house to make it easier for him. And there's a sign, eye doctor clinic, which is original and you can still see in their house. So these are all the things that I want you to do when you go to Israel. I want you to have the wonderful meal, think about all these people. And in case you forgot how to get there, Ben Yehuda Street, walk for minutes, and you are there. So I want to thank all of you for coming and starting off your morning and starting off your summer learning Torah, learning about Eretz Yisrael. The more you learn about Eretz Yisrael, the more you love it, the more I love it. And I hope to see you here every week, Monday at 10 a.m. And now, if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer. You could write it in the chat. That's probably the easiest way, or if anyone has any questions. If not, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope the sun is shining behind me. It's 5:44 p.m. and you guys see the sun shining through my windows, still shining in Eretz Yisrael, the wonderful sun of Israel. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. There are also other amazing classes you could find on the SEA schedule. So fill your day with Torah, and I hope to see you here next Monday for a completely different topic, different direction. We're going to be going to different places in Israel, all focused on a certain theme. Can't wait to get back to Israel. I can't wait to have you back in Israel. It's very lonely. You're walking in the streets, you're going to all the places that are supposed to be filled with tourists, and there's just not. I really miss everyone, and I hope you get to come soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry I was late.
Thank you, Adele. Loved it. Tell her thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
Thank you, sweetie. I'm so glad you came.
We can't wait to come to the next bar mitzvah. Okay.
Great. I can't wait to see you.